Oh, hello, Albion. It's me, Mr. Ketterer, just working in my backyard. Earlier this evening, when I got home from work, I couldn't help but hear in the backyard a strange noise. It sounded like this. Click, clack, click, clack. I knew, from the books that I've read about leprechauns, that was the distinct sound of a leprechaun working on his shoes. I decided to get my shovel, head to my backyard, and I'm going to find that buried treasure. There's a book about it. Love to share it with you. It's called Clever Tom and the Leprechaun. Hope you enjoy. An old Irish story, Clever Tom and the Leprechaun, retold and illustrated by Linda Schutte. Clever Tom and the Leprechaun. One fine day, on Lady Day, in the harvest, Tom Fitzpatrick took a ramble down the lane. Click-clack, click-clack, he heard through the hedge. So Tom tiptoed closer to take a look. The clacking sound stopped when Tom peeped through the bushes, and in the shadow, what did he see? Why, a big gallon pitcher and a teeny tiny man with a brown leather apron and a three-cornered hat. Up the small man climbed on his wee wooden stool and dipped his little piggin into the crock. Then he settled down, with his full mug beside him, to hammer on the heel of a fairy-sized shoe.
By the powers,
thought Tom.
It's a leprechaun. If I catch him and scare him, he'll give me his gold. Since I'm a clever fellow, that should be simple. Before the sun sets, I'll have me fortune made.
Tom stared at the leprechaun and tried not to blink. He knew that if he looked away, the old man would escape. Then he crept up quite near and tipped his hat, politely saying,
Good day to you, neighbor. Blessings on your work. Well, thank you kindly,
said the small one, but he never looked up. He just kept on tapping at the heel piece of the brogue. Tom moved his hand closer while he smiled very sweetly and said,
Today's a holiday. You shouldn't have to work.
The leprechaun frowned and answered Tom sharply,
If I do, that's my business, and none of your own. Instead of pestering me, young man, you ought to be watching your father's fields. Look there! The cows have broke into the oats. See? They're knocking down the corn all about. The cows in the cornfield?
Tom's head started turning. But he wasn't fooled by the leprechaun's trick. Quickly, he grabbed the sly fellow and cried,
Now you're my prisoner. Tell me where your gold is.
The leprechaun wiggled and twisted and whined.
I'm just a poor man.
But Tom held him fast.
You and I both know you're lying,
said Tom, and he made a fierce, frightening face. Finally, the leprechaun quit squirming and said,
Tom Fitzpatrick, you're too clever for me. I see you're after me buried treasure, so I'll have to show you where it is hid.
With his eye on the bitty man locked in his fist, Tom followed where the leprechaun led him. He traipsed over a hill and under some hedges, and through a ditch, and across the peat bog. At last, just when Tom feared he'd been hoodwinked, he found himself in a great field of weeds.
Dig there,
said the leprechaun, pointing to a bush.
Deep under that bullion is where I put me gold. Thunder Nation, said Tom. I need to fetch me spade, but when I return I'll be lost. There are 40 acres of bullions here, and each plant looks just like the other.
Still watching the leprechaun, Tom figured out a plan. He tied his bright red garter on the bush.
Swear, you old rascal, that you won't take this off while I run back to get me spade? That I will promise you,
the little man said. Tom grinned, knowing that leprechauns always kept their word.
Now, since I have shown you where me treasure is, I don't suppose you'll need me anymore. No,
said Tom.
My fortune's made. You may go and good luck with you. Then goodbye, Tom Fitzpatrick,
said the leprechaun.
May you do much good with what you find.
Away Tom ran, as fast as he could run, figuring out how he'd spend that gold. Then back he came, with his shovel in his hand, back to the field of Boyens. But when he got there, lo and behold, a garter, just like his own, was tied to each and every bush, as far as he could see. Tom dug under the bullion, where he thought that he had tied his garter, but nothing was buried under that bush, and so he dug under another. He dug to the east, and he dug to the west, and still he found no treasure. The harvest moon rose as he dug to the north, and it set as he dug southward. When the sun came up, Tom saw he'd dug 100 holes. And tired Tom Fitzpatrick knew he couldn't find that gold, so he gave up and headed for home. From then on, Tom always carried his spade, and he never stopped listening for the tapping in the field. Every chance he got, he'd tell how he nearly found the gold.
And since I'm a clever fellow,
Tom would end his tale,
the next time I catch that leprechaun, I'll have my fortune made.
And that is the end of Clever Tom and the Leprechaun. Well, Albion, I've been digging all night, and I could not find buried treasure. But I hope that you did enjoy the book, Clever Tom and the Leprechaun. Check it out at our library. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Hello, Albion. Today, Clever Tom and the Leprechaun was brought to you by myself, Mr. Ketterer, and the voice of the Leprechaun and Clever Tom, none other than the most Irish guy I know, Mr. McGinnis.
Mr. Ketter, it was my pleasure to help with that.
Thank you.
But I do understand you're having a leprechaun problem in your building.
They have created much mischief here, those mystery little fellows.
Well, as a leprechaun expert, I've brought my very own self-made leprechaun trap that I think should help you out.
Mr. McGinnis, we will put that trap in action, and if we catch any leprechauns, we will split the gold with you.
Outstanding. Good luck.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.